America, we've got a problem, and no, it's not just gas prices or the fact that half your Amazon packages are late. This one's bigger, sneakier, and scarier, and affects all Americans. While most of us are busy scrolling TikTok or binge-watching the latest reality TV train wreck, China has been playing 4D chess with our country, and trust me, they're winning. From hacking your grandma's Facebook account to buying up farmland right next to our military bases, the CCP isn't just knocking on America's door. They're setting up shop inside the house, raiding the fridge, and trying on Uncle Sam's slippers. This isn't some Hollywood dystopian flick. It's real. It's happening. And by the end of this video, you'll be asking yourself, how much control does Beijing really have, and how the heck did we let it get this far? Let's break it down. China's silent invasion, the CCP's deep penetration into America. 1. Penetrating federal agencies and government institutions. Chinese cyber attacks. The 2015 Office of Personnel Management, OPM, breach exposed sensitive data of over 21 million Americans, including government workers and military personnel. Stolen data included fingerprints, security clearance details, and personal histories, potentially allowing China to build extensive intelligence profiles. The SolarWinds hack, although broader, is another example of advanced cyber operations that included Chinese actors targeting U.S. government systems. China's influence operations. Chinese operatives have targeted lawmakers and decision-makers. One infamous case is that of Christine Fang, aka Fang Fang, who infiltrated U.S. political circles, including forging relationships with at least 2 mayors and even a member of Congress, to influence policy favorable to Beijing. So-called research collaborations. Through the Thousand Talents Plan, Beijing recruits American researchers to share advanced technology and knowledge. This program has resulted in multiple arrests, including Dr. Charles Lieber, a Harvard professor accused of concealing his involvement with the program while receiving millions in funding. 2. Academic institutions. Confucius Institutes. Marketed as cultural exchange programs, these institutes operate on U.S. campuses but are funded and controlled by the CCP. Investigations have shown they suppress discussion of topics sensitive to Beijing, like Tibet, Taiwan, or Tiananmen Square, while influencing curriculum to align with CCP narratives. Many have closed following backlash, but rebranded versions often operate under different names. IP theft via academic collaborations. MIT, Stanford, and other top-tier universities have collaborated with Chinese entities, sometimes inadvertently sharing sensitive research in areas like quantum computing or biotechnology, which are critical for national security. Chinese student surveillance. Reports indicate Chinese students in the U.S. are monitored by their government. Dissent can be quickly investigated by Chinese police operating covertly within the United States. Informants within student groups report dissent back to Chinese authorities, creating fear among those who might criticize the regime. 3. Technology and cybersecurity. Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications giant, has been accused of embedding backdoors in its equipment, allowing Beijing to conduct surveillance. Many U.S. allies, including the UK, have banned Huawei's 5G infrastructure after extensive investigations revealed the potential for espionage. TikTok. Owned by ByteDance, TikTok collects extensive user data, including location, biometric details, and browsing behavior. Critics argue that this data could be accessed by the CCP, as Chinese law mandates companies share information with the government upon request. Critical infrastructure probing. Chinese hackers have repeatedly targeted U.S. infrastructure. A 2020 report revealed attempts to breach power grids, natural gas systems, and water treatment facilities, potentially setting the stage for future sabotage. 4. Financial institutions and economic influence. Wall Street ties. Major financial firms, such as BlackRock, have significant investments in Chinese markets. These relationships often discourage criticism of Beijing's human rights abuses, like the persecution of Uyghurs, due to economic dependency. Debt diplomacy. Through projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, China uses loans to gain leverage over nations, many of which are U.S. allies. This strategy creates economic dependencies that Beijing can exploit to isolate America diplomatically. Corporate acquisitions. In 2016, Chinese company ChemChina acquired Syngenta, a major agricultural firm, giving Beijing influence over global food supply chains. Similarly, acquisitions in robotics and AI industries have raised concerns about the transfer of sensitive technologies. 5. Critical industries. Agriculture. China owns 384,000 acres of American agricultural land. That's a 30% increase just since 2019. Chinese entities have purchased farmland near U.S. military installations, such as Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota. These purchases have sparked fears that the CCP could be using these acquisitions for surveillance or control over food supply. The CCP has been working to undermine America's agriculture dominance, and Communist China is now leveraging their monopoly on drone manufacturing to further this goal. This presents numerous unacceptable national security risks and gives Communist China leverage over our nation's food supply. China's dominance in agricultural inputs, such as fertilizers and pesticides, poses risks to the U.S. food supply if relations deteriorate. Pharmaceuticals. Over 90% of antibiotics and many other essential drugs used in the U.S. come from China. This dependency was starkly highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic when supply chains faced disruptions, raising concerns about Beijing's ability to weaponize medical supply chains. Rare earth minerals. China controls 70% of global rare earth production, which is essential for electronics, military technologies, and renewable energy systems. This gives Beijing significant leverage over industries critical to U.S. national security. 6. Media and entertainment. Hollywood self-censorship. Movies like Top Gun, Maverick have altered content to appease Chinese authorities, such as removing the Taiwanese flag from promotional materials. Studios often avoid depicting China negatively to secure access to its lucrative market. Propaganda networks. State-run outlets, including CGTN and Xinhua, operate in the U.S., often framing Beijing's policies in a favorable light while spreading disinformation about critics. Social media influence. Platforms like TikTok and even Twitter have been used to amplify CCP propaganda and suppress narratives unfavorable to the regime, often targeting Western audiences. 7. Surveillance and law enforcement. Chinese police stations in the U.S. Investigations have uncovered CCP-linked police stations in cities like New York, used to intimidate Chinese nationals and dissidents. These stations reportedly operate under the guise of community outreach but are tied to China's Ministry of Public Security. Spy balloons. Earlier this year, a Chinese high-altitude balloon crossed the U.S., gathering intelligence over sensitive sites. Beijing claimed it was a weather balloon, but its path over strategic military locations raised alarms. 8. Military and defense. Defense contractor infiltration. Several cases of Chinese nationals working at U.S. defense contractors have been uncovered, including spies who passed classified information about fighter jets and naval technology to Beijing. Data harvesting. Through platforms like TikTok and consumer devices, China gathers vast amounts of personal data, which could be used to blackmail key personnel or develop AI-driven military strategies. 9. Local governments and businesses. Sister city programs. Over 200 U.S. cities have partnerships with Chinese cities. While often framed as cultural exchanges, these programs are used to push CCP narratives and influence local officials. Lobbying efforts. Chinese-affiliated groups spend millions lobbying state and local governments to adopt pro-China policies, including resolutions supporting Beijing's claims over Taiwan. 10. The overall Chinese threat to U.S. democracy. The counterintelligence and economic espionage efforts emanating from the government of China and the Chinese Communist Party are a grave threat to the economic well-being and democratic values of the United States. Confronting this threat is the FBI's top counterintelligence priority. To be clear, the adversary is not the Chinese people or people of Chinese descent or heritage. The threat comes from the programs and policies pursued by an authoritarian government. The Chinese government is employing tactics that seek to influence lawmakers and public opinion to achieve policies that are more favorable to China. At the same time, the Chinese government is seeking to become the world's greatest superpower through predatory lending and business practices, systematic theft of intellectual property, outright spying, and brazen cyber intrusions. China's efforts target businesses, academic institutions, researchers, lawmakers, the US military, and the general public and will require a whole-of-society response. The government and the private sector must commit to working together to better understand and counter the threat. Call to action. The CCP's relentless push to infiltrate and influence every facet of American life is not just a future threat, it's happening now. From the heart of Washington, D.C., to your local community, their strategies are calculated, covert, and aimed at undermining the freedoms we take for granted. It's time to take a stand, not just as individuals but as a united nation. Here's what we can do. 1. Demand transparency. Push your elected officials to prioritize investigations into CCP-linked activities in the U.S., whether it's farmland acquisitions, academic collaborations, or tech partnerships. We deserve to know where foreign influence is hiding. 2. Support stronger cybersecurity. Advocate for legislation that safeguards our critical infrastructure and personal data from foreign hackers. The next big attack could target anything from power grids to your online bank account. 3. Boycott complicit companies. Be mindful of where your dollars go. If a company is cozying up to Beijing or turning a blind eye to CCP human rights abuses, call them out and choose alternatives. Every purchase is a vote for the future you want. 4. Get informed. Share videos like this one, read up on CCP tactics, and spread the word. The more people who understand the extent of the threat, the harder it will be for the CCP to operate in the shadows. 5. Empower local leaders. Influence starts at the grassroots. Urge local and state governments to scrutinize partnerships with Chinese entities, like Sister City programs, and make sure their operations are transparent. 6. Protect free speech. The CCP thrives on silencing critics, even here in the U.S. support organizations and leaders who defend free speech and stand up against CCP intimidation tactics. 7. Strengthen our resilience. Invest in American-made goods, support local industries, and champion policies that reduce our dependency on China, especially in critical areas like rare earth minerals, pharmaceuticals, and tech. The fight against CCP infiltration isn't just about politics, it's about protecting our American way of life. The United States has stood as a beacon of freedom and resilience for generations. It's up to us to ensure that light doesn't dim under the shadow of foreign influence. Stand up. Speak out. And most importantly, stay informed. The time to act is now. The CCP's infiltration into critical sectors of American society represents a direct threat to U.S. sovereignty, security, and democratic values. Vigilance, transparency, and coordinated action across all levels of government and industry are essential to combat these efforts.